And now the season predictions are out the way. We're going to jump straight into that prediction and that discussion we've been telling you about this first series with the Baltimore Orioles coming up. The excitement is here. Opening day is tomorrow as we're recording this. And so to bring you some extra special content, we've got the MP for Nottingham North, Alex Norris, since 2017, but more importantly, a huge Baltimore Orioles fan. Alex, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I similarly cannot wait for opening day. I'm not sure it's going to be tomorrow, though. I've been watching the rain with sort of manic uh, energy, and it's a bit cuspy at the moment.
Yeah, I've been bookmarking Orioles fan I know in Baltimore who keeps giving weather updates from the local area. And it seems like we might get away with it and the rain will
So, yes.
stop before first pitch. So we'll see. But obviously, before this series, I think it's probably worth just pointing out and just paying our tributes to the scenes in Baltimore this week. I think particularly pertinent with this series coming up and the tragedy that's occurred there. And thankfully, to be honest, it looks like a lot of lives have been spared by some quick thinking. But either way, just horrific for the city. And I know it's a city you're close to, Alex. So just
Yeah,
pretty horrifying news to wake up to, wasn't it?
yeah, absolutely, just dreadful. I think it makes for it's going to be quite a poignant opening day. I think it's going to be very heavy on people's minds. It also comes off the back last weekend. Peter Angelos, long-time Orioles owner, passed away, and he had a profound impact, obviously, on the franchise. Owned it for over 30 years until very, very recently. So I think there'll be quite a lot of emotions around, on what would always be a day of excitement. But I think that will add an extra dimension on the day.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I guess from an Angels point of view, it's going to be a challenging environment to go into, particularly with the way the Orioles played last year and how they're looking this year. But before we get onto that, Alex, why Baltimore? Why the Orioles? And why baseball?
Yeah, I mean, I love baseball. It came to me first. I don't think this is an uncommon story, but at university, there was something great about something that was on every night and late. So you come back in from wherever you've been on night out, and there's always baseball on. So that's great for a start. And we started. There were three of us, and we were watching games. Might have done a bit of betting, and then we thought,
Very
no,
topical on this podcast,
right,
Alex.
right.
We,
Very good. Oh, good. And then I mean, it's the terrible, worst sport in the world to bet on baseball. It's a very easy way to lose your money. And so we thought, well, we need a team. We can't just watch whatever games on Channel 5 or whatever. So we need a team, and we drew it out of a hat and drew the Orioles out of a hat, and got into it. And that was 22 years ago now. We've done an awful lot of losing in that time, a lot of losing. I've watched a lot of losses. But now things are on the upswing. It's seeming like a reasonable investment of time and emotional energy.
Absolutely. The winning always makes you forget about all those losing seasons when you
Yeah.
have those high moments. Who did the others draw out the hat out of curiosity?
No, we were all together. We'd
Oh,
stick as one.
and have the other two stuck with it?
Well, so it then translated later on into the Baltimore Ravens, the NFL, and certainly for one of our number, that holds greater interest. Still pretty manically fans of the Ravens, and sadly, the third, Alex, passed away just before opening day last season. So yes, but he was a huge Orioles fan right till he passed. He's because I haven't been. I've been to half a dozen, well, more than that, Ravens games. But he made a point of going every season to watch the O's at Camden Yards. So yes, it got under our skin. I think it's safe to say.
Yeah, as it tends to do. I don't know if Toby wants to come in with a
Yeah, I mean, kind of when I was starting to get into baseball, the Orioles, I was very much one. I didn't have a clue about baseball, and I just looked at like which teams' logos were the best, and the Orioles were definitely up there on one of the that were the best I was going to go. But then eventually made it out to a couple of games, and then ended up choosing the Angels from who I saw. So I think the Orioles might have been a close second if I was just picking on logos, as superficial as that sounds.
Yeah, that's entirely reasonable. I mean, I have to say, I'm never sure orange looks good on anybody. There's a lot of orange.
I didn't want to say it, but I think you can pull it off, Alex,
Oh, I
honestly.
don't know. I don't know.
They do say orange is the new black, so it's fine.
Right, fair dues. Fair dues.
So last year, then, let's talk about that first. 2 years ago, you finally had a winning record again, I think, with, was it 83, 84 wins? Then last year, this explosion, 101 wins, just an incredible season. The young guys coming up, everything seemingly starting to come together. We know the playoffs were a step too far at that stage for a young team, as it turned out. And I know actually they were taking place during Labour Party conference last year, weren't they? So that must have been a challenge in itself to follow. But how was last year, and what do you feel about it now as you head into the 2024 season?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great season. I absolutely loved it. Winning 100 games is, having seen us lose 100 games many times, it really beats the alternative. Um, it's been in the pipeline. I think it probably came a year sooner than we thought. So did going back to a winning record probably came a year sooner than we thought. You know, this is part of a long-term plan in Baltimore. This is no kind of alignment of the stars. There was a lot of tanking in order to build the talent base up, and the talent base has started to come. You know, you have a couple of good veteran guys help as well along the way, but largely the story was young guys, particularly Adley Rutschman as catcher, but Gunnar Henderson, American League Rookie of the Year, looks like he's got the chops to be a perennial MVP candidate. Certainly now Shohei's in the National League.
Yeah.
So sorry for bringing that up too soon.
Yeah,
I mean, if I was being really honest, you know, we were by far the best team with runners in scoring positions, numbers wise. Now I know this would divide sabermetricians watching this, but you'll never convince me that's a repeatable skill. That somehow, I don't really believe players become more clutch. I think maybe some are better at the end than others, but not in a really repeatable way that makes a meaningful difference to more than a game or two. So that probably will come down to earth. We also had a lot of success in one-run games, which again, normally perhaps you'd say if you've got a really good bullpen, which I don't think we had. The bullpen's been the weakness of the team. So I think there's perhaps room for that to come down, but I still think you're looking at 90 wins and a pretty decent tilt at the division title. So this is set up to be an excellent year again. We're very optimistic, I think.
Yeah, you say 90 wins like it's nothing. I mean,
Yeah, it's very high aspirations, I would say, considering what we think is going to happen to the Angels season, 90 wins. But obviously, you say about the bullpen, obviously added Craig Kimbrell. So he's obviously going to strengthen the Orioles. Potentially might see him tomorrow. And then obviously Corbin Burns coming in as well. He's going to do a lot, I think, for the Orioles. And unfortunately for us, we have to face him tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, the Burns addition's huge. That's the biggest trade for the Orioles since like Reggie Jackson 40 years ago. It just hasn't been part of the model. You know, the assets down on the farm are incredible. There are, you know, plenty more where that came from. Burns is a really good fit, as much as we would like, you know, the ownership to go and put a big multi-year deal in for Montgomery or Snell or one of the other guys. That was never going to happen. So this is great. Much better than we could have. We spent less than you know Dylan Cease would have gone for. So, and he's a better pitcher than Cease. So that's a huge addition. Kimbrell, I don't like veteran relievers. I think bullpen again is another inexact science as to who's good one year to the next. So we'll see. As I say, I think that's probably the weakness. I mean, you guys get a bit of a break. Actually, playing as early in the season is probably the best time. Kyle Bradish isn't fit, obviously well known to Angels fans. He would have been the number 2 guy, but he's got a dreaded elbow strain. They don't think it's Tommy John, but it's always Tommy John in the end, isn't it? So he's not there. John Means isn't ready yet as well, our 3 guys. So you'll see a slightly weaker rotation, but I mean, Grayson Rodriguez will be Saturday's pitcher and another rookie kind of phenom, and obviously Burns. But you might have a chance on Sunday against Tyler Wells. Tyler goes either one way or the other, but also, and this is strange, and you'll definitely have no sympathy here. That actually the spirits on the message boards are quite low about the Orioles at the moment because fans are really upset that a number of our top prospects got sent down to AAA, and we still seem to be gaming service time rules, which is a little frustrating. Jackson Holiday, you know, best prospect in baseball, left-handed hitting second baseman. And we picked up Tony Kemp yesterday, left-handed team. So, now, Tony Kemp, by all accounts, is a nice guy. Great on the bases, but can't get on base. A great fielder, but there's as much as there's Holiday, there's another 3 or 4 guys, all of whom we thought would make the roster and make this a very exciting team. And that's clearly going to be a couple of months away because of those other kind of considerations. So maybe this isn't a bad week to players.
Yeah, you made a few really interesting points there. I just want to pick up on. I think on Corbin Burns, and you talked about the trade, and I think it's an incredible trade for you and just the sort of frontline pitcher that every rotation needs. But there is no long-term contract there. He's sort of pitching. This is a contract year for him, isn't it? And the payroll, I believe, is something like 94 million still for the Orioles. It's still low. Even looking beyond those mega payrolls of the big cities, it's still well below people like Kansas City and St. Louis and places like that. So you've got to worry that he's there for the year and then he's off somewhere else who can afford him. Or do you think with new ownership now, they might finally put in a fair offer and raise that payroll? So that's sort of question 1 there. Yeah. And 2, with regards to your guys in the minors, and like, I fully understand your frustration. I think every franchise wants to see the best players up there straight away. They don't care about contracts, do they? They care about putting the best product on the field at the time. We're quite lucky as Angels fans in some ways, and I would never really say this, but only because we bring our prospects up straight away. We don't have many of them, but there's been a fast track process in Anaheim recently, whereas we're getting these high-end college guys, they're ready, they play 20 games in the minors and then they're up in the major leagues because, to be quite frank, our minor league development isn't the best and they can learn on the job there where we need them to. What I will say is what you saw happen to the Orioles last year with that incredible season and then a sort of flame out in the playoffs. Potentially this approach might work. Potentially keeping in the minors, keeping them fresh. We know rookies struggle towards the end of seasons generally on their first full year. Perhaps them coming up in June, July and having that spark, even if it's August, is actually what the Orioles need when they go into the postseason rather than from the start, where I think, honestly, the roster's looking pretty great anyway.
Yeah, that makes me remind me, actually, I'll do the second point first. It reminds me, I think our first really good team in the time I was watching in 2012, that came off the back of a decade of even more, nearly 2 decades of losing seasons. And, a young guy called Manny Machado came up with 6 weeks to go, never played in AAA, came directly from AA and gave the whole operation a huge lift. So I think there's some scope there. I think just particularly with the case of Holiday, I mean, maybe you're right because he's only 20. He played at all levels of minor league last year. That's how quickly he got through. That maybe they won't fancy 160 games out of him. But yeah, I mean, so perhaps that's right. But as you know, as fans, we always want to see these exciting guys. I mean, we've got enough of them. I watch Gunnar Henderson all day. That's good enough for me. And then on payroll, I mean, I've always thought the Angels are a mid-market team that behave like they're a big market team, and we're a mid-market team that behave like we're a small market team, and it's it is frustrating. And payroll's 94 million. Last year it was 64 million. Season before that, even smaller, with the biggest chunk going to Chris Davis, who wasn't on the roster anymore. Like, it was really, as tanking goes, it was pretty shameless. Tearing up of the operation. Now, I think I have more chance of pitching in Baltimore next year than Corbin Burns. There's just no chance we're doing a 4, 5, 6 year contract with a Scott Boras pitcher. It's just, I'd love it to happen. It's just not going to. So I think he'll be one and done. It's not such a problem. As I say, we've got Rodriguez, who hopefully will take the next step. Kyle Bradish, who's great. John Means, who's great. There are other pitchers there. But the thing that Orioles fans are crying out for, and the biggest kind of question mark over the franchise and David Rubenstein coming as new owner, is those big multi-year extensions that teams are increasingly doing to their young guys. So I don't, I would love a big Corbin Burns contract, but not a tenth as much as I'd want one for Gunnar Henderson. Right. That's the one really. Rutschman's an interesting test case because, he's a catcher. He catches a lot. 4-year college guy. You get old pretty early in baseball terms. So I don't know if he's someone you commit to for 10 years, although I can't see the franchise not being too risk averse. But Henderson, we really would want to see that deal done, to know that that's your guy you're going to build around, because the scars of losing Machado, who's such a joy to watch, are kind of still very real. And we want to know there's no good reason in Baltimore that, compared to other franchises, as you say, that every time you get a top guy, you should lose them. There's no good reason that should be the case. So we would like to see that happen. I don't think that's too much to ask, frankly.
Yeah, luckily, I mean, by the sounds of it, your new ownership actually has some impetus to make some positive moves. So I feel like there won't be much hesitation to extend some key guys, which unfortunately we've seen with the Angels hasn't happened and then lost them for nothing. So hopefully that doesn't happen to the Orioles as well.
Yeah, we've been there. Just not every time. I mean, it's a big contrast to the Ravens. The Ravens are never really featuring free agency and always, the whole effort is about keeping our own guys, growing your own. And I think in baseball, because it takes so much to get, there's not many Nolan, what's his name's coming up, as you say, instantly college straight up to the majors. You put so much time and energy into them and then you let them walk. It's very frustrating.
Yeah, I can imagine. And as you said, with the Angels operating as they have done previously, at least spending money, we haven't had to see that too often. We gave Mike Trout a mega deal. We obviously thrown some money around in the past. Josh Hamilton, Anthony Rendon's come in, big free agents as well. And I think actually Corbin Burns is someone that every Angels fan has on his list for next year. He's a Southern Californian kid. I believe he grew up as an Angels fan. Not that it really matters too much when you're choosing a team, but we'll see how he does this year. But unfortunately, we're in a position where the ownership wants to reduce payroll. We haven't spent any money this offseason. We've sort of spoken about it earlier, Toby and I, just how really depressing it's been. And I know we're talking in such negative ways, and you know it fully. As an Orioles fan, it's one of the fan bases that can truly appreciate how it is to consistently lose. And we're in this period now, a 9-year playoff drought, and I'm sure it's going to be extended. It does get tough to keep going, but this time of year in March is when you have your optimism at least, and Absolutely. You finally push everything aside, don't you? But I'm happy for you.
But the great thing in that is, though, even whoever comes last is going to win 45 games. A replacement level team's supposed to win 54. So any given, certainly for ourselves in the UK, those Sunday games I think are always really good. So you've always got a chance, and that's different to most sports. So that always kept me interested long enough that that you'd always, on any given night, there's a decent chance you would win, even if on a long enough timeline you won't win enough games or nearly enough.
Fully agree, and actually, it's really what I've said the last few years with the Angels as they are. It's all about moments, and we've had even though the team's been losing, we've had 2 MVPs from Shohei in the last 3 years. So many special things happening with Trout, with Ohtani, with various other guys at Angel Stadium that, the team was losing and it's been depressing. But you're right, you can still tune into a game and see something pretty monumental happening when Shohei's there.
I mean, Mike Trout's Ted Williams. That if you love the game, watching him would always be enough for me. I love him. I've always had a soft spot for the Angels, always want them to do well because I want Trout to succeed. I want him to be in playoffs. I want him to be in World Series. I think he deserves that because he's such a good player and he plays the game the way in which he does. What a kind of role model he is. I know that can be a bit overhyped, but he is a special player, as I say, is right up there in the kind of upper echelons of the Hall of Fame. So, you're always going to be able to find joy in that.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, and just pray that he keeps healthy this year, which the last 4 years just hasn't done. And it is such a shame. But yeah, with Trout in there, anything is possible, and it is just always worth watching a Hall of Famer like that. Yeah. So if we get onto this series then coming up, you've touched on it, but I am worried, and I think Toby's worried about game 1. Corbin Burns against Patrick Sandoval. Now, I say Patrick Sandoval as our opening day starter. We don't really have an opening day starter. So he's just a guy amongst guys at this point in our rotation. I think we've sort of touched on it earlier, but there isn't a standout, and we need someone to come out of the pack. Sandoval had a great WBC for Mexico, really performed well, and we were expecting big things last year, but he just couldn't get his temper under control, to be quite honest. Once it started going a little bit wrong, he couldn't control it. So I don't see anything other than a big Orioles win on opening day, but you never know, do you?
No, there'll be a lot of energy as we've spoken about. So that will suit the home team. Burns will be amped. Burns hasn't had a brilliant spring training. Now, there'll be many who say never look at spring training numbers. I'm not 100% convinced by that personally. But nevertheless, it should be a very good, the kind of the auguries are probably there for a home win. So, but it's baseball, so yeah. But I think there's a lot of confidence, that's for sure. The great thing about the Orioles you'll find is that the lineup goes 1 to 9. Like some of the more under the radar guys, Ramon Urias is a great player. Tony Taters, as we call him, Anthony Santander in right field. Tony Taters is criminally underrated. So it's a very good side that generally, Sandoval's lefty, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that that was part of the reason for keeping Holiday down, was that we're seeing quite a few lefties in the first couple of weeks. So that's like, Gunnar obviously bats from the left side. Rutschman's a switch hitter, but has less power as a right-hander, but better contact. So pick your poison. But Tony Taters is a switch hitter. So you say, well, lefties perhaps is a better matchup.
I was going to say there is potential you could see 3 lefties against us.
Right.
I don't think it will happen, but there is definitely potential. I mean, our rotation last year was particularly left-hand heavy, but we still have 3 guys in there.
I generally would load left-handed starters against that Orioles lineup. Take Cedric Mullins out. Cedric's a former switch hitter, but only bats left-handed now, and he's a bit of a spark plug guy. So taking him out's no bad thing. Colton Cowser, a rookie left-hander. So yeah, I think there's probably possibly some sense in that.
My guess is, but I haven't looked at what they were doing in spring and who's pitched when. I mean, I think our top 3 is probably Detmers and Canning, but they've just been pitching against the Dodgers. So we'll see how it all lines up. I probably could figure it out, but I haven't done yet. But it's going to be an interesting series. We played you early-ish last year. I think it was May. And actually, that was when we were quite high on the Angels. I think we split the series 2-2 in Camden Yards. You came to Anaheim in August, I think, and swept us there. But early in the season, it was an interesting matchup before the injuries really hit and when the Angels were playing some pretty good baseball. So I think, as with any opening weekend series, there is potential for it to go either way. The lineup here, I don't know how much you know about some of our young guys, to be honest, Alex.
Only what I followed kind of box score-wise, yeah.
So, yeah, we've got some interesting guys there. You mentioned Nolan Shanuel, but Zach Neto, Logan O'Hoppe. These are the young guys which are the future of the Angels franchise that have got, I mean, Neto's had an unbelievable spring. O'Hoppe's shown some real power. We got Miguel Sano back on the roster after a year off baseball for him. He's going to be starting at DH for us. Wow.
So, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Exactly.
That Ian Wright meme. I felt like that Ian Wright meme.
He looks like it as well.
God, wow, what a player.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
so Sano will probably start against you. So there's some
potentially former Oriole from the back half of last year. Aaron Hicks might start in
right.
I saw
that Hicks is a great player.
He's had a brilliant spring as well, so he might lead and start in right field.
Like the joy, because the Yankees are paying him 1 more year, I would think.
Yeah, we're paying him minimum.
So the money that last year, he was being paid to beat the Yankees was just so good. I mean, he's funny because I thought he was brilliant in Baltimore. He's one of those StatCast confounders in the, like, his overall slugging numbers are pretty good. His exit velocities are terrible.
Right.
So he looks, which is why I always thought he would work well in with that short porch in right field at Yankee Stadium. Because when you go to Fenway, which obviously has an absolute ocean out in right field, suddenly there's a lot of wounded ducks dying there. But in New York, he can still pop homers out. So great guy though. I saw that, I thought that's a great signing. Like really great glue guy. Loads of history. Just great player in Baltimore. We loved him.
Yeah, he seems to fit in really well. Had a really good spring and sort of pushed aside some of the young guys in Anaheim. We had last year, Mickey Moniak had a really, really good year. We've got Mike Trout, obviously, in centre, and Taylor Ward will slot in there. He's another very good ball player, hopefully back to full health after a horrible facial injury last year. But Hicks has kind of come in there now and sort of pushed Moniak and Adele, because Joe Adele's still around as well. We're probably going to carry 5 outfielders going into the season. But yeah, interesting that he's coming back to Camden Yards straight away.
He always seems to have an extra gear when he played the Yankees because he wasn't treated very well in New York. I fear we may take the same approach to ourselves. Let's hope not. So yeah, that's another X factor then.
Absolutely. So you obviously talked about the Yankees. It's a tough division you're in every year. How do you see it going this year? And is there anything more satisfying than finishing above the Yankees?
Yeah, it's great fun. I mean, one of the biggest things for us was going from 17 divisional games to 13 now. That dropping 4 games each from, the Yankees, the Rays, the Jays, and obviously Red Sox are up and down, but you're never glad to see them. You're certainly never glad to go to Fenway. So that's been a huge help for us. I mean, there's always, one of them is always really good. The Blue Jays flatter to deceive, but the Rays just when you think it's over, it never is. Obviously, the Yankees have gone ballistic this off season too, so it's going to be a tough division. The teams are all going to beat up on each other. I mean, one of the great curiosities that we've got hanging over from last season is that we're on a historical, I think we're up to the second greatest streak in history of not losing series. And that's one of those, as I say, I'm generally skeptical of most things in baseball as being repeatable or not. That, I think, speaks a little bit to management. Brandon Hyde, is a big kind of confounder of received wisdom in the sense that the owner that the skipper that takes you through the rebuild never gets to the good bit. But he's kind of always hung around, big kind of locker room guy. And I think that speaks to some of that resilience. So whoever we play, we're always a tough out. So I can't think that we're likely to get swept too often. So yeah, difficult division. I still would put us as favourites though. We've got a really strong lineup. The pitching's behind the hitting, but there's some starting pitching. There's some decent back end of the bullpen. The middle's soft. But there's loads of horses to come, as we've talked about, but also at the trade deadline, there's good reason to think we can be active there too. So yeah, I think, we will start rightly as favourites.
We've probably got a few guys you can pick up from our bullpen by then. So,
well, if you've got anyone like Kyle Bradish, we'll have that again.
Well, yeah, we'll never regret that. Not the Lord Bundy years. He gave us some good times.
Great. It never quite happened. He was a phenom in the minors. Never quite happened for him in Baltimore. But I was quite sad when it didn't work out. I mean, he's still playing this season? Is he somewhere?
I think so. I'm not sure where he is now, but he was knocking about.
His stuff doesn't play with a low 90s fastball. Just he hasn't. The secondary offerings just aren't there. And he got injured, and it just never quite came back for him. But yeah, but another crossover player.
It's a real shame, but we liked it. It looks like he's still a free agent now. He was with the Twins last year, but it doesn't look like he's signed. So I'm sure he will be. Maybe when you need another rotation arm some point during the year, he'll be coming back.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, Alex, we'll leave you there. Just finally, let's give a prediction for the year. So, prediction for the Orioles record, and then who is winning the World Series this year?
So, I think we'll win 90 games. I've pinned my colours to that mast. I don't really fancy anyone in the National League. Maybe Atlanta's hard to look past in the National League, aren't they? So maybe an Orioles-Braves World Series with the O's winning in 6.
There we go. You heard it here first.
It could be a longer season, I'm afraid, in Anaheim. I think my critique, not to extend the segment too long, but my critique would be that it's never clear whether you're rebuilding or contending. And Billy Beane would always say, you're either doing one or the other, or you're wasting your time. And I mean, I think there's quite a case to trade Trout if he plays all the way up to the trade deadline. I know that's sacrilegious, but, just to get all that talent that you can into the minors, because it does come good in the end, I think. So,
yeah, I don't think there's any chance of trading Trout now, but we should have traded Ohtani. We said it. I said it for a year and a half, 2 years that he should have gone, and he didn't. Yeah. And you're fully spot on with where the state of the Angels are. I know Toby's nodding there as well.
Yeah, we've kind of wasted a lot of our breath saying that we have no idea the direction of the franchise. I don't think they even know. So it's good to see that the outside fans have noticed it as well. Hopefully something happens.
Great.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for having me.
No, thanks very much, Alex. Really appreciate coming on. And what are your opening day plans before we go?
Oh yeah, I'm so excited about this. So, I mean, it'll be me on the sofa with the dog and a couple of beers. But, I had a sort of a thing last year. As I say, my friend Alex passed away. So I marked that then with a beer, and I'll do the same tomorrow. That's why I was so desperate for it to start on time, because at 8 o'clock UK time is just heaven on earth. You've done everything you need to do. You can have a few beers. I'll probably, I won't know probably about it. I'll have the Premier League darts on my iPad next to as well, because and that, if you can't tell me, watching the baseball with the darts on the side, that's living.
Perfect. That is the dream.
And I think it's a 7:05 start tomorrow, because our clocks haven't gone forward yet. So it's a 3:05 Eastern. So at the minute, that's a 4-hour time zone difference. So it's 7:05 start tomorrow, hopefully.
I can't believe the hardship you've just saved me, because I would have missed that. I absolutely would have missed that. So there we go. I was hoping it might be on BT Sport, but it isn't, I don't think. They're not.
It's a shame, but that's probably our fault rather than yours. We're not the most desirable team to be watching this year, I don't think, without show.
And in fact, one more thing I've got to get on the record, sorry, before I go. If you do have any viewers who are political, my colleague Ed Miliband, of course, is a huge Boston Red Sox fan. And I'll be honest, that's all he and I ever talk about, is the state of our relative AL East team. So the opening series last season, or certainly very early on, we lost because we dropped a pop-up in the outfield, and then the next pitch went for a multi-run home run, and I never heard the end of that for weeks and weeks. So surely we'll finish above the Red Sox and give me the.
You've got to, haven't you? They seem in a bit of disarray like us this year. But I know Ed actually went on the Bat Flips and Nerds podcast a few years ago, which is a British baseball podcast as well. So I know he's big, and we'll keep this going. Maybe we'll try and get him on during the Red Sox.
He loves it, so you never know. I'll talk to him about that.
Yeah, I'll give him a shout.
Great.
Cheers, Alex. All the best. Have a good opening day and opening series and bank holiday weekend. And I hope you have a good year.
Cheers. See you then.
Thanks, Alex.